Hey everybody, it's Peter, and this is the 2024 Kawasaki Versys 1000. This is the top of the line in Canada. We get everything on it included. And in this video review, I'm going to talk about all of the details in this bike and try to show you a few things that the other videos aren't showing you. Now, new for 2024 is the color scheme, but we also have to compare it to what's out there in 2024. So that's what we're going to do. And of course, if you have any questions, I'm filming here at Jim Gilbert's Power Sports, Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals, the #1 volume Kawasaki dealer in the country. So of course they have this in stock. They actually happen to have a 2023 also in stock in that reddish color. You'll see it on the Kawasaki website, or of course you can go to the link in the description in this website and get to their website and see it for yourself as well. So two options here right now, and of course more 2024s rolling in soon. But if you have questions about this bike and you want to know something that I don't get to in this video, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Let me know in the comment section, because I get to come back to these bikes again and again and again, and I will make sure I do that. I love this bike. I happen to think it's a really great bike, kind of unique in the class. So I'm perfectly happy to pull it back on camera and make sure that we talk about it again and again. So let's get going with this review. So before we get into the actual review, let's talk about this bike in its class and also talk about Kawasaki's Versys setup, because they have a 300, a 650, and a 1000, and they're, to me, different class of bikes. And I'll tell you about what I mean, the different classes. First of all, the 300, we're gonna have a review on this channel. It's the X300. They put some semi-on-off-road tires on that. It's a very lightweight bike. It's a great beginner bike. It has similar styling to this, but it feels completely different. It's a very high revving bike. It's a 2-cylinder, 300cc, roughly 300cc bike. And again, it's a little bit more of a lightweight adventure bike. Lightweight in both weight and lightweight in its capability of adventure bike. But that is kind of what it is. Can you tour in it? Absolutely. Then there's the 650, a bike that I used to own. The Versys 650 LT comes with the exact same bags as this. That bike is what I call the perfect street engine. It has enough power to help you enjoy yourself, but it also has enough, sort of efficiency, both in purchase price and everything else, insurance pricing, to kind of make it good for the masses. That bike is quite nimble for the class, and probably the sport tour of the class, definitely with an angle towards sport. You really see that ninja roots, or you really feel those ninja roots in there, but you still have an upright seating position, adjustable windshield, and that kind of thing. This bike changes things. You lose some of the nimbleness from the Versys 650, whereas the Versys 650 is what I've called in the past the perfect single passenger lightweight sport touring bike. And I say lightweight in the sense of, more for one person, more for a smaller displacement than some of the bigger touring bikes. This bike takes it up a whole other notch. First of all, it's much better suited for two people. It has a whole lot of technology, and we're going to go through the technology in this, and it really kind of steps beyond that sport touring class. It still has sporting capability. This is the Ninja 1000 engine, but it is tuned a little bit differently. But really what you're getting here is a luxury tourer. So luxury tourer at the 1000, sport touring at the 650, and lightweight adventure at the 300 is kind of the Versys lineup. Let's get going with this review. So starting at the front wheel here, we're going to start to figure out what the manufacturer's intent of this bike was. And right away, you're going to see not off-road tires. That's one of the misconceptions about this bike. Because it has that sort of adventure style seating position, a lot of people think the entire Versys lineup is an off-road bike, and it is not. These are still sport to sport touring type tires. They're Bridgestone tires. And what you have here is a few things that look somewhat dated. Now, it does appear to be some surface rust on here. That's not surface rust on the brakes so much. It's just sort of, it will appear in the video here, but I don't want you to worry about that. It just came out of the crate kind of thing with this, and sometimes they have some cleaning that needs to be done, and obviously we haven't touched up the brakes here. But what you have here is Kawasaki used to have these pedal style brakes on all kinds of bikes. They've moved a little bit away from that. This bike has been around for a while. They haven't done an update. Don't change what works great. Again, this is still a great bike in the class. So you still have that pedal style disc. It's a dual disc system. It is an ABS system, and it's sort of an advanced ABS. We'll talk about that as we go through the bike when we talk about some of the technologies. You also have the radial mount, so a little more super sport style mounting here of the brakes there. Again, looks a lot like the Ninja 1000. For all I know, it's probably shared with the Ninja 1000. You also have the upside down forks here. Now, there's a lot to talk about with these upside down forks because they're actually electrically adjustable, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes in there. So again, this sort of takes you into that luxury touring type segment. Of course, the upside down forks give you less unsprung weight, so that's going to help with some handling. Again, this isn't a super darty kind of bike, but for a big tourer, it's very sporty. And when you compare it to other large tours that are going to be comfortable for 2 people to go on, again, a very sporty capability on this bike. We're going to look up from this for a second and talk about a couple of the lighting differences before we go around and talk the heart of this bike, which is the engine. So normally when I talk about lighting, I turn the lights on. I'm going to leave them off here just so we have sort of some consistent balance between the camera and what it's looking at here. Of course, you have bright white LED lights here in the headlights. So we used to have Kawasaki had one light, halogen light lit, one not lit when you had low beams on. They're both lit, they're both high beam, or both high and low beam, and they do have a bright white LED light. Now, one of the key things with a bright white LED light is because they're so bright, they have to have a sharp cutoff just for regulations, and they do have a sharp cutoff. The problem with a sharp cutoff on a motorcycle is as the bike leans, the direction you're turning actually loses headlight on the ground. So let's pretend it's leaning this way. You're going to lean this way towards me. You're going to lose headlight where you're looking, and because it has such a sharp cutoff, you don't have much light. Kawasaki fixes that with 1, 2, and 3 lights down here. As the bike leans, you have a cornering light that'll turn on. Each one of these 3 lights are aimed individually, so depending on your lean angle, it's going to light up what's missing in that corner. First that light, then this light, and then all 3 lights will be lit. So 1, and then 2 lights, and then all 3 lights will be lit, depending on how far you lean over. It's connected to the IMU, which senses lean angle and a whole bunch of other things. Again, we're going to talk about that in a few minutes here as we go through the technology of this bike. But connecting lighting to the IMU is something that you don't see on a whole lot of bikes. And again, the progressively adding extra light, it seems gimmicky, but when you think about a great headlight system, maybe a great headlight system on your car with a sharp cutoff, as you lean that and you're losing light, they've solved that problem with this lighting system. A great way to solve it. Only gives you light when you need it, only gives you light where you need it. Just a smart system. So taking a look at the heart of this bike, you have a 4-cylinder engine. So again, inline 4-cylinder, a couple little things that you don't always notice. It is shared with the Ninja 1000, but it's tuned differently. Actually, it has less peak horsepower. It's got a lot of torque in the middle, and a lot of people think that less peak horsepower means less usable, but it's really tuned for the type of riding you're gonna do with this. You're not driving this, you know, at red line all the time, so it makes a lot of sense. You also have this extra bar protecting you here, so that's something that a lot of people don't notice. You have sort of a crash bar built in there. Kind of nice thing to have over the engine. So 1043 cc, different tuning than something like the Ninja 1000 SX, but again, plenty of power. Kawasaki doesn't list horsepower numbers, but we can look those up and figure out which one you want to believe. There's a few different numbers out there, but plenty of power for what you need to take 2 people, and very, very torquey, very, very smooth engine with electronic throttle control. It's just very, very smooth engine, and that's one of the key things with this is if you're riding for a long time, you want something that's smooth, reliable, and you can ride all day at speed, whether you're on highway, country roads, whatever it is. This bike can handle it, and that's sort of the real key piece of that engine. That smoothness is something that everybody talks about with this engine. You also have very good wind protection, so we're going to start looking at some of that, and we're going to hop on the bike, show you what it looks like with me on it, and then we're going to start going through some of the technology of this bike as we move our way around. So jumping on this bike is something that you have to sort of see for yourself. Now I'm about 6 feet tall. Everybody asks me my inseam. I don't remember exactly. I'm a proportional 6-footer. This is a touring bike that you do benefit from being a little bit taller. So again, you can see if you were shorter than me, you could still fit. I'm almost flat-footed if I push down. One of the things with bikes like this is sometimes you measure seat height, but some are wider at the front here than others. This one is a little bit wider. So part of the reason I can't quite flat foot is not necessarily the seat height once I sit on here, but it is from the width of the seat. Now that width of the seat does benefit you in being able to move around a little bit. You can move forward, you can move back, and still have all the space you need. It's a nice wide seat. You've got a lot of wind protection with an adjustable windshield. You've got hand protection here. We're going to show you in a second that you do have heated grips here as well. All of this is standard. Center stand. There's so many things that are standard on this bike that are usually accessory added in the future. The biggest thing here is with the electronic suspension. If you add a passenger, you tap a switch in the dash, and you can, or if you add just luggage, tap a switch in the dash, and the preload electronically adjusts to carry the weight of your luggage. If you add a passenger and luggage, again, you tap it again, and it has a preset there to electronically adjust itself, and you can actually see the bike raising up in the rear, which is kind of cool. So no manual knob, no tools or anything else, just tap a button and it adjusts. We're going to talk more about the suspension in a second when we talk about the technologies of this bike, but the general seating position is extremely comfortable. Now, one of the things that people say with this bike is they feel like it's a heavy bike. And I can tell you when you're sitting on it, it doesn't feel that heavy. You do have a 21-liter fuel tank up top here, which can add some weight, or you can add some feeling of weight. But when you consider something like the Vulcan or Vaquero, Vulcan Vaquero or Vulcan Voyager in the Kawasaki lineup, they're like almost 200 pounds more, 150 pounds more than this. You do sit lower on those bikes, but they're big bikes, and they really give you the same capability. This can travel long distance with a lot more technology, a lot more speed, a lot better handling, all kinds of stuff. So it's not that heavy when you consider what you can do with it as far as touring, but it is something that is taller, and it is capable of taking some weight, and it is bigger than, for instance, the Versys 650 more weight. But again, very manageable if you're my size, 6 feet or around 6 feet, 5'10" and above. You're probably not gonna notice the height as an issue at all, and if you're experienced with motorcycles at all, it just feels very comfortable, very controllable. So seating position is here, but let's go through some of the technology and try to make plain English sense of all of it, because there's a lot on this bike. So the technology on this bike is a huge piece of it, but it's often overlooked and often glossed over by almost everyone else reviewing it. I'm actually gonna do something that's really boring for a second, but if you wanna know about this bike, this is the best way to go through it, is we're gonna go through the website really quickly, because they list the technologies there, but a lot of time it's just an acronym, it's something that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So what we're gonna do is go through that technology really quickly and put plain English words to what it does for you as a rider. So simple stuff, assist and slipper clutch. A lot of those have realized what that is. It does two things. If you dump the clutch from high revs, it'll allow the clutch to slip instead of allowing the wheel to slip, so it does its best to assist you in that situation to avoid a slip if you've dumped the clutch. It does have a quick shifter on this bike, so you don't always have to use the clutch. When you downshift on the quick shifter, it's going to give you an auto blip, so you know that'll kind of take care of that. But the other side benefit of the assist and slipper clutch is the assist part. The fact that it is a lighter clutch lever pull, which is very nice if you're driving through town, if you don't want to use the quick shifter, or if you're just stoplight to stoplight kind of thing, pulling that clutch in and out, makes for a lighter clutch. Assist and slipper clutch. Economical riding indicator, simply a light in the dash telling you you're being efficient. Usually you're part throttle, that kind of thing. Electronic throttle valves, so many Kawasaki bikes have that. So many other bikes have that as well. Not super high tech nowadays, but it allows some of the valves in the engine to be controlled electronically instead of just by the throttle, and that means that it can over-open when you give it some throttle and allow it to react a little quicker. It's good fuel response, or good throttle response, basically, is what that gives you. Electronic cruise control, I think we know what that does, but this bike has it, so there you go. Kawasaki cornering management function. This is a really interesting system. So we're going to talk about the IMU in a second. It's something that can sense the orientation of a bike. The short answer is, without getting into the details, if you go into a corner, the bike can sense not just the actual braking forces, but the engine braking forces and other things, and it can help you keep your line. And same thing with accelerating out of the corner. That cornering management function is going to help you keep the line going into and out of the corner. It's an oversimplified explanation of what that does, but basically, if you're riding this bike and you find that you're really able to keep your line through the corners, part of that is that cornering management function that can sense everything from braking to engine braking to acceleration to other types of forces and balance all of those systems. It's an oversimplification, but that's what you feel on this bike, and that's what makes it good. And that's part of what makes it kind of a sportier ride, is you have some assistance with the technologies. Low and high power modes, basically if you want to drive it around town, don't want the full power, or if you're giving it to someone to ride that's maybe a little bit less used to stuff, or if you're in rain mode or something like that, it has the ability to reduce the peak power, allowing you to have a reduced power thing. Smartphone connectivity. We're going to show you the dash in this. It's a unique dash in this compared to any other Kawasaki motorcycle, but it does have some connectivity through the Kawasaki Rideology app. That can allow you to do all kinds of things like track certain pieces of your ride. If you get a telephone call, your dash can let you know, all kinds of things in there. Depending on the bike, there's different functions, but you can look up the Rideology app and kind of dig into that. Long story short, this has this. The fact that it can be connected to the Rideology app means as that app improves and increases in functionality, your bike may also be able to increase in some of that functionality as well. Moving on, analog brake system, we know about that. Keeps your wheels from skidding. It is cornering sensitive to the best of my knowledge. Cornering lights, we talked about them already. Again, sensitive to the tilt. Ergo fit basically is just telling you that the bike can be adjusted to fit different types of people. So if you are shorter, there are shorter seats. If you are need the reach to be adjusted, that kind of thing can be adjusted. IMU, enhanced chassis orientation awareness. The IMU basically tells the computer, IMU is a computer, and it tells if the bike is braking and the rear wheels coming up, accelerating the front wheels coming up, whether it's a wheelie or just sort of shifting on the suspension. It can also sense lean angle. We're going to show you some of that in the dash, but it can also sense the twisting on any of those axes. So if the rear wheel's sliding out, if the front wheel's sliding out, all of that can be sensed and more through the IMU. And like I said, that IMU is what allows you to have the cornering lights and what allows you to have different types of cornering management function, the Kawasaki cornering management function that we talked about earlier. Because it can sense the orientation of the chassis and do all of that so much faster than you can, it can help you and assist you in things. And then it's got the Kawasaki electronic control suspension, which works with the IMU, which is, again, if you jam on the brakes, it can stiffen up that front suspension so it avoids that dive. If you jam on the accelerator, it can avoid the dip in the rear and that kind of thing. And the suspension itself is also always adjusting to road surfaces and bumps and that kind of thing. And when you think about a motorcycle, up and down, when they're driving straight, the suspension kind of works normally. But as the motorcycle leans over, you need real precision in the suspension's up and down movement to the road's up and down movement. And that precision is what this electronic suspension is really good at. It can sense what's going on, whether you're leaning, because it knows if it's leaning, it knows what's going on with the road, and it can adapt that suspension. So very cool system there. It was on the H2 that we filmed yesterday. This is Kawasaki Z H2 SE that we were filming yesterday, same type of system. And then KIBS, the intelligent anti-lock braking system. So it mentions ABS, an intelligent ABS system. Basically what the intelligent system does is it can sense things as well. It can sense that dive, it can sense the cornering motions. It has an intelligent system, and it also, instead of just sensing a skid and automatically pulsing, it can have a variety of different style pulses. It can sense how the bike is reacting and cornering, that kind of thing. So it's a much more intelligent braking system. You're going to feel it less at the lever and in the pedal, and also have a little more precision to your riding. Again, what does it all mean? It means that for a bike of this size and weight, it becomes very easy to ride for, you know, especially in emergency situations when you're jamming on brakes or in the corners and that kind of thing. So a lot of technology that's going to help you out. Let's wander our way through, look at a few other pieces, and see that technology kind of in action now. So before we go too far, I want to show you kind of the dash view here with a sort of a view back from here. You can see you've got handlebars here instead of clip-ons. So it's nice to have these big handlebars because on a bike like this, you may want to have a GPS or something like that included. You've got a lot of spaces to mount that GPS system in there. So it's kind of made for that. It's also got a power point right there, 12-volt power point, so you have constant power if you had a GPS. You also have a separate tachometer than the digital dash. They don't do that with any other digital dash bike in the lineup, so kind of an interesting thing. Some people think that's an older thing, but I think it's just the way this bike has so much technology. They've stuck with it because it works for what they're doing. They don't have to redesign anything. You do have a large windshield. It does have a nice vent in there, which is going to reduce the pressure, because again, anytime you have a windshield, it's going to have sort of negative pressure behind. It can sort of have a sucking pressure there. When you let the air through, it doesn't have that sucking pressure. It's going to make a more smooth riding experience, and of course that is height adjustable as well. So two little screws here, you can bring it up or down, so you have that height adjustment. We're going to look at the seat, we're going to look at the luggage in a second, but let's start with the technology in here. This is a different screen than some of the other Kawasaki's, and I've found in the past it can be a little bit difficult to film, especially with the colors. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to dim it down here and show you a little bit of what's going on here as we take a look. Yeah, again, it's not going to focus great, but I've brought some color down. Over here on the right side is a very clear gray area, and there's a single, I'm going to call it a man. It's a, you know, looks like a person. I don't know if you can see it as clearly as I'd like you to. But what we're going to do is, very first thing we're going to do is adjust the preload. And you're going to see the actual dash move in a second. So we're going to hold this down for a second, and hopefully you can see enough. It added a luggage beside that man. And you can see very gently the bike moving on the screen. Now, maybe you can't see it if you're not looking at it again. Pay attention again. We're going to see the bike moving again. We've added an extra passenger. So there's a man on the left, icon, and another man on the right there. I'm going to call it a man. It's an icon of a human. So then you go, so that's the preload adjustment. As simple as that to adjust it. We're going to tap it again, and maybe you'll see the bike move back to the right. Again, it's on its side stand, so the bike should be moving a little bit this way now. Just a little bit on the side stand. I can see it and feel it moving. Camera doesn't catch as much. The other thing we have is the typical ride modes. So we're in road mode right now. Let's go right up to the top here for a second. You've got a sport mode. Sport mode and road mode are both going to give you full power, but it's going to be a little different throttle response on both of them. So you've got sport mode at the very top. We move down to the road mode, which is probably where most people are going to ride on this bike. We can move down again to rain mode, and I believe that's it. We're going to hit the button one more time just to make sure there's no rider modes. Yes, that's right. Just the rain mode in there. So rain, road, and Sport, and of course you can have it in those anytime you want. Bright big gear indicator right there. So of course this does have the quick shifter. You can shift up or down after you get it in first gear anytime you want. And then you have some things down here. So trip A, we're going to cycle through that one just for a second. Trip A, trip B, and then right now we have a lean angle and a bar graph, and as I shake the bike a little bit, you can see that lean angle kind of changing a little bit. I don't want to shake it too much, but that's a bar graph, and then you also have the max lean angle. So it's gone 16 degrees to the left, it's gone 15 degrees to the right since somebody reset it there. Again, it might be a little fuzzy for you. It's hard to get the focus perfect on this screen. For whatever reason, it's very clear in person, but hard for the camera to pick up exactly what it's seeing. And then we'll keep going through back to your odometer. So we'll leave it on the odometer, and then down here on the bottom, just below the odometer, you can see it had kilometers per liter, and now it's average kilometers per liter. So that's instant and average fuel efficiency listed in kilometers per liter. You can do liters per 100 kilometers as well. You can do miles per gallon US, miles per gallon UK, all sorts of stuff for instant and average fuel efficiency. Keep going through. Range, which is calculated based on how you have been driving. It'll tell you roughly how many kilometers or miles you have left, kilometers here in Canada. Then you have average speed, total time, and then your battery, and then back to the instant fuel efficiency. On the far right there is your outside temperature in 19 degrees, and then above that you have the coolant temperature there as well. So very clear dash with lots of stuff. I believe you can invert the colors on this. You can invert the colors on all the other Kawasaki dashes. I kind of like the black here. And then again, the manual tack, or the analog tack, excuse me, revving to 10,000 RPM right there, and all your warning lights just outside that tachometer right there. So that's kind of the dash, how everything works there. Let's talk about the practicality of this motorcycle now. So you're looking down at the rider's seat right now. Again, not as narrow as some other bikes out here, but it does give you a little more comfort. So you don't have that pronounced sort of triangular feel because it's sort of wide throughout. Again, kind of wraps up here again to keep your, you know, almost don't need a tank protector here like this sticker is sort of working in the showroom, but you've got a little bit of a ride up there on that seat. Kind of harder to show on camera, but you can sort of sense that it's there. What's really nice about this bike is it's really the only bike in the Versys lineup that I would recommend touring with two people. Again, the Versys 650 and 300 are both capable of taking a passenger. Versys 650, you know, certainly good for, you know, the odd couple hour trip. But if you're actually touring all day, every day, one thing that doesn't show up on camera is how large this is. This is a very, very, very large seat that's very comfortable as well. It's well padded. So both rider and passenger have a very comfortable area. You also have a lot of places to tie down your gear. You've got the hand grips there for the passenger. You can stick a top box on the back, which would give you a backrest. You can get a pad for that top box there. But the thing I like is if you don't do that, if you just have this rear rack there like it is, that rear rack, although this has a bit of a spoiler here, you know, a little bit of a backrest almost built into the seat, it is relatively flat to the seat. So if you had a duffel bag here instead of a top box, you could strap that on and have lots of room. But again, that passenger has that, you know, that sharp back. Again, the outside layer here is raised up, but it's curved here, it's flat, and then it has a sharp angle here, but it's relatively flat to there. So duffel bag could be strapped on if you didn't want to buy the extra luggage. And then we're going to show you the side cases, and then we're going to show you the rear light, just because I haven't showed you that yet, and I want to show you one piece of it that I don't love about this bike. So Kawasaki's factory luggage on a bike like this is excellent. You can basically get these bags on the Versys 650, the Versys 1000, and on the Ninja SX 1000. I think that's it for the bike. Actually, maybe on the H2 as well, the H2 SX, the Ninja one. But you basically get these bags on that line of bikes, and they're very, very good. So they do fit a full face helmet, but they come with sort of this green line you put on and this silver top. So if you didn't like the coloring of just the bags, in theory you could swap out the green line for black or silver or whatever else you wanted. And this panel as well you could swap out. But of course it kind of color matches the motorcycle as it comes, and they are included here. Now you have a few things here. They are factory key mounted, and that's a big thing. So your ignition key is going to open that up, which basically means if the ignition key is in the ignition or in your pocket, you know these bags are both secured to your bike and locked up from prying eyes. Now there's a few ways to kind of handle these things. If I pop that up, I can slide this off the back. It takes a little bit of force, like they are sort of stuck in there nicely, but if you see orange, orange is bad. So we're gonna keep that down there, and then you have the same sort of thing with the handles down here. There's a little handle here. I don't know if you can see on the angle you're on, but there's a little bit of orange in there. If you see orange, it's bad. A full face helmet will fit in here. I've used these bags myself for many years when I had a Versys 650. These are just really practical. They do a good job of keeping the weather out for me, at least in my travels, and I don't expect to be too much problem. They do have a bit of an interesting shape. Now, a lot of people say, oh, I wish it was square. You could say that, I guess it would matter, but it does kind of give you that helmet with the extra space in there and a lot of your stuff. If you wanted soft bags to go in there, you could put soft bags in, well, just take the soft bags in. I just take the hard luggage in wherever I'm going, but whether you're camping, cottage, whatever you need to do, hotels, you're gonna fit everything on here. And again, they're easy to remove. Some people have asked me in the past about why the reflector is there. When you take this off, there's a reflector on the side of the bike. I know Canadian law requires to have a certain level of visibility with reflectors on the side. So you have reflectors on the front here. I'll show you down there, down on the fork right there. And when these are on, it's probably a law thing that has a reflector on the bag, but that's why there's a reflector there. Some people have asked that. Hopefully that answers your question. One thing I should point out is, we'll sort of try to zoom in here for a second here. If you look a little bit closer there at the rear peg, there is an attachment on the rear peg that allows the bag to sit into a rubber sort of mount down there. And that's also what sort of holds it on, as well as, if we zoom back out again, it sort of goes into the hand holds there. When that's gone, the only thing you have is that little rubber peg. You almost don't even see that. So they're a very clean mount, and when they're removed, they're fully removed. Let's look at the tail light, because there's also one thing I don't love, and that's what we're gonna show you right now. So taking a look at the back of the bike, a few things worth noting. First of all, both bags are the same size. On a lot of adventure style bikes where they mount the exhaust up high, you can't have that full size bag. So it is worth noting that both are 28-liter bags. Tire down low is a 180 width tire. A couple things going on here. You do have a nice tail light and you have some signal lights. Let me take the key out of the bag here, throw it back in the ignition. We'll turn the bike to on. You should see a tail light come up there. As I hit the brake lever, you can see bright red LED. What I don't like though is these right here. For whatever reason in North America, a lot of Kawasaki's bigger bikes are still coming with the incandescent bulbs, and you can sort of see them glowing on and glowing off instead of the LED. 650s and below, almost exclusively LEDs. My Z900 RSSE still has the incandescent light, the same exact lights as this. The ZH2 and this bike, and the ZH2 and this bike, both on the website say full LED lighting, but as you can see, in Canada, for whatever reason, we don't have full LED lighting. Let me quickly show you. Now, you do have LED lighting even on the license plate light here, bright white LED license plate light. Everything else is LED, but not the signals front and rear on this bike, even though the website says full LED lighting, and in other markets you'll have the full LED lighting. You don't have that in Canada. I don't know why. I'm trying to find out, but I don't know why. Let's quickly show you the controls on the handlebars, and then we'll sort of help you decide if this is right for you, and if it's not right for you, we'll sort of go over why it may not be right for you as well. Taking a look at the left side controls, first of all, you do have the hand guards. Again, all of this is standard. I mentioned the center stand, which is something I haven't shown you. That's standard as well. That light clutch pull here. There is a trigger over here. Let's just zoom into all the actual controls. There is a trigger right over here. I push that forward and it will turn your high beam on. I keep it in and pull it into flash. So there's a trigger that you can't see. Then over here, there's your cruise control. So it's harder to reach, but easy to, it's not something you'll accidentally hit. Over here, you have the main controls, the mode controls. I was using those to adjust things like the ride modes. When I held them down, it adjusted ride modes. When I just tapped them, this one adjusted the odometer, trip B, or trip A, trip B, and regular odometer. This one was adjusting things like your fuel efficiency readings, the battery voltage, the time riding, all those kinds of things. So the lower display, upper display, right in there. Preload, I hold this down, and that was what was adding that extra thing for the luggage and the second passenger. Then you have signals, horn, you have a reset button over here, you have the four-way flashers over here, and then you have something that I added to my bike, which is standard on this bike, and this is heated grips. Now, some people will say that they're not as hot as other grips. You can see the controls lay out very well. I find they're perfectly hot for me. I again ride my bike without the wind, without the covers here in the winter, and they're fine for me. I have gloves that don't have a lot of insulation on the inside, but they do have insulation on the outside. This, of course, is going to take the wind away, so I don't think heat will be an issue. The issue I have with these heated grips is the way they're activated. We're going to try to show you that right now. When you tap them on, see how it's flashing twice? That tells me it's on level 2. But when you're riding, you have to look down to see that flashing and watch it actually flash. And then, of course, once it's green, you have no indication if it's on level 2, level 1, or level 3. So there we go. Now it's down to level 1. And it's about to go on level 1. If I tap it again, it's off. Tap it again. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. There's no indication in the dash there's no indication on here. You could just do 1, 2, and 3 LEDs to let you know which level it's on, but you have this flashing system, which is very difficult to watch because you actually have to watch it, not just glance at it when you're riding. So they work perfectly fine, but the interface isn't great. It looks fine, it works fine, but the interface is not my favorite in any way. Again, I have them on my bike, so it's fine, but it is worth noting that Kawasaki could probably improve that in 2024. So let's talk about who this bike is for and who it's not for. And again, we have to look at it in the context of 2024. So in 2024, there's a couple things that other bikes are going to give you that this won't. First thing is, they could give you better LED lights, they could give you a better interface for the heated grips. Those aren't really gonna matter and shouldn't be keeping you away from this. There are also some bikes like this, the sporting capability, that are more sporty. The Kawasaki does not have to make the Versys more sporty because they have the Ninja 1000 SX, which can be equipped with the same bags. It has a slightly more sporting position, most of the same controls, a little bit different dash, not the electronic suspension, so there's some variance in there. But you can equip that Ninja 1000 SX to be the more sporting environment. This bike sits in a unique spot because it is a really good two-person bike for touring that still gives you a level of sportiness that is all you're going to need on the street. A lot of the sporty bikes that are released today are great on the track and they're well beyond anything that the average rider would need or have the ability to use on the street. This still has that. Now it's not as flickable as a lighter weight, something like the Versys 650, but on the Versys 650, that's not a bike that I would advise long-term touring with two people. Fine for one person, great but not as great for two people. This is going to give you a much better platform for two people. You've got an engine that has enough power to do all highway miles, but this is a great country road bike as well. You've got great wind protection all around, and that's one thing actually that's a negative with this bike. On a super, super hot day, you do not have the wind flow you would have on other bikes because you've got such great protection. To me, that's a pro, but it can be a con in incredibly hot environments, and it's worth noting. For me, here in Canada, that's going to extend my season. I can start earlier in the spring, I can go later in the fall, and that helps me out. The one thing that this bike is not that some people want it to be is this is not an adventure bike. It is not something that is designed in any way. Some people think, oh, if I just swap the tires, I can do a little bit of adventure riding in. That's not what I would grab this bike for. I would grab another bike to do adventure riding. If you're staying on the road, this bike is going to be very, very good. Even in 2024, this bike is still fully up to date. It's going to give you everything you need. It is a little bit larger bike in physically size, so you're going to need a little bit extra room in the garage. But again, compared to something like the Kawasaki's own Vulcan Vaquero, which is a much bigger bike, you're going to get far more performance, just as much comfort, and great technology. The technology can't be overstated. The suspension that smooths out the road, the cornering control that helps you keep your line in the corners, all of the systems and safety systems in here. And safety systems are important on a touring bike because you're going to hit roads and conditions that maybe you haven't been to before or you can't plan for. Again, I can ride around my yard. It's going to rain, I'll go home around my yard, around my house. But if you're on a tour, sometimes your vacation schedule means, hey, it's going to rain, and if you hit the rain, you've got rain modes. You've got all the safety systems that can help you in poor conditions or poor road conditions. And all of that matters on a touring bike where it may not matter as much if you're just doing the odd couple hours in the weekend and that kind of thing. So in 2024, is the Versys still a competitive bike? You bet it is. It's still very good value for the class as well. You know, whether you buy the 2023 that's sitting here or the 2024, again, same bike, different colors, they're both very competitive and I think will make a lot of people happy. And again, it still remains one of my favorite bikes, especially for the purpose of those longer distance rides, being able to take all your stuff and being able to take someone you love with you. So there you go. There's my review of the Versys 1000, the 2024 model. If you have questions, Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals, Jim Gilbert's Power Sports has this bike in stock. Like I said, right now they still have 2023 sitting here as well that they got late last year. So there are options for you. If you have questions that I didn't get to, do me a favor. Give the video comments, maybe give it a like, that kind of thing. Subscribe. Let me know what you want to know about this bike and we'll pull it back in for a future video. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll talk to you in the next one.